it's high time that I tell you about my good friend and co-author Kevin Hobbs. We just published our first book together called Edible, or Pflanzenessen in German.
This is our book, Edible.
70 sustainable plants that are changing how we eat. And it all started here in the forests of northern Austria during one of the first Corona lockdowns. Of course digitally, because Kevin lives in the southern UK, but we somehow connected just before on Instagram because he had just published his book, The Story of Trees. I had published The Flavor of Wood, and somehow we connected through our shared passion for trees, or for the amazing world of trees. Funny thing was that we had never actually met in person and had finished everything digitally. So it was really cool to finally meet Kevin in London first, visiting Kew Gardens with him, and then at a later point also Hillier Gardens, his old stomping ground. This is where we sat down and talked everything about the world of trees, plants, edible, the future of food, and everything around it. Surprised seeing you here, Kevin?
Yeah.
He really is what the word plantsman was invented for. He knows everything about plants, worked all his life in the world of growing plants, and is highly successful in doing it, working with many businesses all around the world, and even advised the royal family once.
My career is predominantly been in ornamental plants. However, inevitably, so many of those ornamental plants also have edible properties. Mm-hmm. And I was actually commissioned by a company to seek out unusual edible plants that could be used and commercialised, made available to a wider audience. Chefs in restaurants, but also farmers markets and supermarkets and so on. And I had no shortage of ideas, of course. And luckily, with my job, I've enjoyed a reasonable amount of travelling and being a sponge for all things botanical.
Oh yes, for sure. You should go through a garden with him. It's like crazy. It's always, oh, there this plant, and then he tells you like half an hour story about this plant and what he have tried and over there, and so it's like crazy your knowledge about plants. Seriously, it's really impressive.
I'm renowned. It's difficult when I'm driving, and I see amazing trees or plants. Or even the plants in between the carriageways on the roads. Plants are everywhere, and I love the world of plants. At home in my garden, I enjoy plants for their ornate value, but I've got lots of unusual edibles in the garden, whether it's leaf or root or seed or fruit, and I very much enjoy incorporating it into my garden. It just opens your eyes to the opportunities out there, and then you turn on the TV, and we're all concerned about climate change and war and famine and so on and so forth, and food security is such an important subject, and it's something that we read a lot about, you and I, and study and talk about a lot. And the ideas with the plants we featured, so many of them can be adopted in other countries responsibly. Obviously, we need to make sure, because some plants in some locations may be invasive and so on. But there's opportunities.
So it's 70 plants from all around the world, every continent and every climatic zone. We really search for plants far and wide, which we think could be the future of our food system.
We hope that our book will open everyone's eyes to the diversity of plant-based foods that are out there. Many very close on our doorstep, in fact.
So Edible, definitely you came up with it at the beginning, and then we developed it together.
It was a great journey to go on. We're keen to, as Arta said, to include plants from all around the world, and some of these plants will be perfectly familiar. We've written about coffee, but we haven't written about the coffee bean, of course. We've written about the coffee cherry, which most people haven't tried, and that's very tasty. We've talked about potatoes, but heirloom potatoes, because most people have never tried the ones with the pigment and the anthocyanins, which are so healthy for you, and the purple colorations and the red colorations throughout the potato. And a few other more common plants, but there's lots of more unusual plants.
this book actually made me even more positive looking into the future, because I've seen that there are so many plants which can be used in the food system to fill many gaps or replace everyday foods which we eat today. But not only that, but they are already grown like on a large scale. They are already feeding in many cases millions of people, and it's relatively, I mean, not speaking as a farmer, but still it should be quite easy to implement them in a larger scale in other countries. So that actually made me quite hopeful about the future.
Oh, absolutely. What's great for me is, you know, my love of plants and nature has opened my mind to so much. History, you know, in particular, you know, I love looking into all these wonderful plants and finding the history and what cultures use these plants. And of course, indigenous cultures that often had an innate understanding of these plants and also an innate understanding of unseen relationships, you know, in the soil and mycorrhiza, and unseen to us in modern times of how plants interact with each other and other animals and other you know, living creatures. And I like to think nowadays, you know, we live in a time where there's much more scrutiny and much more cooperation and consideration, and by all working together, we can point out, you know, the vulnerabilities or the risks of what we're doing with introducing new plants and new farming techniques. But you know, obviously the consensus is we don't want to be using lots of chemicals. We don't want to be disturbing the soil and the flora and fauna that live within soil, the mycorrhiza and the bacteria and so on, which is so important. You know, we put a man on the moon, but actually in these modern times we don't actually know that much about what's going on beneath our feet in the soil, and it absolutely fascinates me. And you know, loving plants and wanting to conserve nature and plants and biodiversity, you know, starts with a good understanding and knowledge of it, and it starts outside your front door, basically. The trees in the streets and any local parks or wildlife that you have, and there's a story behind every plant, every tree, and that's what fascinates me.
The book is really a passion project of ours, a combination of our backgrounds. Kevin, the absolute plantsman and an extreme expert in that field, and mine is coming from the food side and ecological side, and I think we really kind of met in a good way, and yeah, the book was a great result, and our friendship is even a better result.
Oh, absolutely, yes, it's been a great project.